Hello, I'm Riley, and this is the Diegetic Advancement Podcast. Okay, so I missed some weeks of podcasting and some in-person RPG sessions. Had the flu for about 3 weeks there, finally feeling better, and so recording an episode. Though it has inspired me to talk about RPG group robustness and resilience. Playing shorter campaigns or one-shots, or with new people, is an enjoyable experience, but I would argue that it is a different experience than playing with a consistent group and longer form play. I also think the former type of play is much easier to make happen. So, how do you build a robust and resilient gaming group? Well, I don't have the answers, so please call in and share your thoughts. How have you gone about building your gaming groups? One aspect that I think is important to building such a group is consistency. Missing games and changing schedules makes it hard for me to commit to a game and build engagement and excitement. So, what can be done to ensure consistency? Well, again, this is another place I won't profess to be an expert on, so I'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions. I'll throw out some ideas though. Firstly, schedule. Without a schedule, you won't have consistency. I think the best schedule for me is either a weekly or fortnightly game, run on the same day and at the same time, for 2 to 3 hours, hosted online. Any longer than fortnightly, I struggle to build engagement and excitement between sessions. Inconsistent days or times makes it hard to plan other commitments, and I hate having to say maybe to another commitment because I might have a game. And 2 to 3 hours online is really the easiest amount of time that I can block out in my schedule. My current live gaming is actually all done in person currently, but the strain of travel adds over an hour to the time commitment. That does just make things more difficult. Now that we have a schedule, we need to not skip sessions. Setting a rule that you won't skip sessions if you're missing players, I think is also a big help. So each missed game makes it harder to justify having blocked the timeout and hurts engagement and excitement. Now, you need a robust campaign to be able to do this. One that doesn't fall over if you're missing a player or players. I'm fine with having play characters fade in and out of existence with no explanation, but this doesn't fit all campaigns or all sessions. So what else can we do? Having a stable of characters so you can go on a separate adventure when you're missing players. I think a good downtime system and maybe escape the dungeon role can help you so you don't end up with stranded characters who don't get played until you're missing the same player again. And giving the stable of characters something meaningful to do between being played makes them kind of worthwhile having. Or having a side game or games, playing one shots of other systems, for example, or just playing a board game or doing some other social activity. I think it's much better to do something than to cancel. What happens when the GM can't make the session though? I got hit with the flu and had to miss a handful of games, and so the sessions were cancelled. I want to think of some ways that I can encourage the sessions to continue without me. I think board games or doing some other social activity is probably an easier sell than getting other players to game master, though, unless they're already GMs. I do wonder what the best way to encourage that would be. How can I get my current players perhaps interested and potentially to try out game mastering? Semi-related is player numbers. My current group's numbers have dwindled to 3 players, which I think is a great number for actual play. The issue is that it can go from 3 to 2 to 1 to none pretty quickly, especially because 2 of the 3 are a couple, so they're a package deal. So recruitment is important. Constantly be looking for players, and as you gain more or gain a more consistent and robust group, I think you can be more picky with some sort of screening process, having test games to introduce a new player, so you don't want to risk upsetting the group dynamic that you've built. I've also had a few players say that they can't commit to the schedule, so having them be on-call players, I think, is a good idea as well. If numbers start to dwindle for a session, reach out to the maybes and see if they're interested in showing up for one session. Okay, that's all I have to say on that for the moment. Just a quick blast of some of my thoughts whilst I've been sick and not gaming. I'd love to start a conversation around this, so if you do have any comments, thoughts, or suggestions, please reach out. The details for how to do that will be in the show notes. Speaking of reaching out, I have 2 calls, which are from a little while ago, from Daniel over at the Bandits Keep, and from Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, or perhaps now formerly of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. If I've got any other calls, I've completely forgotten that I have them and I've lost them. So I apologize if you've sent something in and you haven't heard it yet. It means that it's gone from my mind. But if you'd like to um, point me back at where you sent it or resend anything, I will get to it. Sorry about that. Anyway, I will let Daniel take it away.
Hey Riley, Daniel from Bandits, keep calling in. Been a little while. I have been listening, but my voice was shot, so I haven't been calling in many shows. And yeah, I've really been enjoying the Mordheim. It's funny, when you first released them, the first couple I actually skipped over because they were a bit longer and I was behind on things, but then I went back and kind of listened to a few of them. Really interesting mechanics there. You know, little by little, I'm becoming more interested in these like skirmish war game campaigns, which is something I really didn't know much about. But this latest one where you're talking about the exploration and how that might work with a play-by-post, especially when you're dealing with like a real-time kind of thing with another campaign, yeah, I think that's really a good idea. In fact, I feel like that kind of idea of just you search and it's not just, oh, you find 5 gold pieces, but that there's potential that you found something else that could benefit you later on. I mean, yes, it could be a magic item, but it could be like the thing with the well, right? Like, oh, something else you have to do here. You got to roll. Could be more treasure. Could be you get sick. Could be that your men drank all the whiskey or whatever. Like I love that little bit of it. I thought that was really cool and something you could definitely incorporate. I want to mess around with that a little bit myself in games, kind of creating treasure tables that have little pieces in it. Although I feel like they'd work best in something that's either solo or that's more miniatures based and less roleplay based, only because I feel like I could imagine a player at the table saying, well, hold on, that's not fair. Why do I have to just roll about the well? Can I overcome this with my player skill? Which I 100% understand if you're playing a regular game. But in this kind of situation, I think it works really well. I also really enjoyed, and it seemed like you did too, the idea of like how the paladins or whatever, or the sisters of Sigma, they basically have to put their, it's like they don't really care about money, but the money still matters, right? Because how much money they give reflects how much gear they, get offered or whatever. I really like that, right? It's a good, simple way to do it, because I always thought it was a little bit awkward in like AD&D where it's like, you got to give 90% of your treasure away, but you can't give it to another player character. And that like that was written in there because clearly that's what players tried to do. Oh, well, this character over here is starting a temple. I'll give them my money. So I like that it's just like, no, it goes to this like mass trust. Now, of course, in order to do that, you've got to have factions and you've got to establish that these religious types are part of a certain faction, which is probably a little bit more controlling than I generally like to do in a D&D type campaign. But again, I could totally see it working. There's so many, right? When we look at D&D, especially if you look at some of the editions that actually have books for it, there's so many different deities. So being like, okay, well, now I have to worry about different ones. That might be more complicated. Here, it looks like they just have that one. And that would also work in my game, technically, because I only have the one god. So anyways, that's really interesting. I thought it was really a fun episode. Been enjoying all your episodes, and as usual, and I'll talk to you soon. I'll try to call in more often.
Okay, thanks for the call. Mordheim. Yeah, to be honest, it's not as exciting as a read through as I thought it could or might be, but I'm still enjoying reading it through. It does have me excited to actually play some Mordheim, and yeah, I'm getting inspired by a couple of little things. As you said, the way they handle the abstract searching or exploration. I think make a good point. It doesn't fit a regular game. It's too prescriptive. This happens to your character rather than being able to interact with the situation. But solo gaming as a prompt would be a good way to use it, or some of the other suggestions you have there. On the strong faction identities, I really like the factions in Warhammer. They do have strong identities, and whilst you might not want to be so restrictive in character creation in some other game, I think it's a good idea for fleshing out what a cleric is, or what a type of cleric your character might be, or whatever class they are. It's nice to flesh out beyond, oh, I'm just a cleric of some god. Like actually understanding what it means to be a cleric in your world is a good thing to think about. Thanks for the call, Daniel. Now on to Jason.
Hey Riley, Jason here. You asked in your latest episode about sources of inspiration. just about everything. When I'm reading or when I'm watching TV or watching a movie, I try to watch for NPCs or situations that are interesting that could be used in games, and then often I'll transplant them into a different genre game. So I may take something from a Western and put it in a fantasy or put it in a sci-fi game, but keep the parts that work, but just put it in different genres so it doesn't, it's not immediate obvious to the players what it is or where it came from.
And thank you for the call, Jason. Good ideas on genre mixing. I think it's good to get inspired, but if players catch on too often, you're probably going to ruin some of the magic. And yeah, I'm the same as you. I get inspired just by just about anything. Though I'll throw another question back at you and to anyone else listening. What do you do to record that inspiration? I feel like I come up with some cool ideas after reading a book or watching a movie, only to have them leave me when I actually go about writing an adventure. I'm sure they're still floating around in my subconscious somewhere, affecting the types of adventures I'm running and the NPCs I portray. But I feel like I probably need a notebook or something to actually capture the thoughts in the moment. So yeah, thanks for the call, Jason. Okay, so normally I would close out the show with some podcast or other media RPG related recommendations, and today's going to be no different, though there is 3 or more weeks of stuff to recommend. So I am going to miss some stuff which I think is great, but it would be a shame not to do this because there have been some really great podcasts put out in this time, which I've only recently caught up on because I was too sick to even listen. But without further ado, I'll take it away. Okay, so just a few recommendations, keep it short, but there's a couple of standout episodes from my time away. Firstly, over on the Cockatrice Nuggets podcast, he talks about simplifying your game, and this was a really great podcast and really got me thinking about my own gaming quite a bit. So I encourage you to go check that out. Sameoldji, always putting out really great content. Often talking about in character as character play, which is not a style that it's not my preferred style, but Sameoldji just puts out such great engaging content that I can't help but listen. Recently putting out an episode on 4-dimensional role playing sparked up quite a bit of discussion on the Audio Dungeon Discord, and a couple of other podcast episodes have sprung up on that. Go check those out as well if you can find them. I don't have room for links to everything, but definitely check out Sameoldji's stuff. And lastly, the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. This might be my last chance to shout them out. Lots of great content this last month. We've had interviews with a game designer, which was really fascinating, talking about procedural play, and the most recent, which is the one that I'll link, a sort of roundtable discussion on the One Ring, which I found really interesting. It's a game that I'm interested in but have not played. So highly encourage you to go check that out, as well as some of the recent episodes from Jason. With that is all for this week. I'm glad that I've got something out. I've been pretty busy, even, I'm feeling better, but lots of catch up to do. So I'm glad I've been able to get back on the horse. Next week, I think we'll return to the regular schedule. I'll be talking about what games I am running and playing in. I've got a bunch of Kickstarters that have started to flood in, so there might be some content reviews, and I think there'll be the final installment of the Mordheim read-through. All that and more to look forward to. But otherwise, thank you very much for listening, and bye for now. I'd love to hear your feedback. You can reach me via Spotify, SpeakPipe, Discord, or email. Details, along with everything I've talked about today, are in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.